and welcome to Made at Home Taste Buds on a Veggie series. We've got Becca Stackhouse from the University of Georgia. She's the Family Consumer Science Agent in Crisp County. And I'm Katie Cullum from the University of Arkansas. I'm the Family Consumer Science Agent in White County. Today we're going to talk about freezer-friendly ways to save money. And this is one of my favorite ways. So, make ahead and plan ahead. We've already talked about how planning is so important, but it's not just to plan meals. You also have to plan a little bit of extra time to prep, because we talked about convenience foods versus from scratch. So from scratch foods take a little bit more time. I also mentioned a local store that does, say, a 10-pound meat sale. I went there early and I did manage to snag a 10-pound chub of ground beef. And I saw people there with like 8 to 10 of those chubs of ground beef, and I just thought, what are they going to do with all that? How are they going to manage that? So hopefully they had a plan. Maybe they were going to let some people have some and they were going to cook some. I don't know, but plan how you're going to take care of that food also. So one of my favorite things to do is prep ingredients ahead. So if I cook chicken or ground beef, I'm going to cook more than I need and freeze the extra. I never buy a small package of chicken anymore. I always buy the big one because it's cheaper per pound to buy a big batch. That way I can cook it. I can put it in my stand mixer and shred it into dinner-sized portions that I can use very quickly. Same thing with ground beef. For that 10-pound chub I got, I used 2 pounds to make some meatloaf, and I cooked the other 8 pounds. And that way I had 8 pounds of ground beef in the freezer just ready to use. And it's quick and easy to thaw this out and use it. Tonight we're going to use this for tacos. So one great way to do that. Another great thing to do is to freeze an extra batch. Double a recipe, make an extra casserole, soups, stews, and chili. Great time of year to do that. And if I'm going to make lasagna, I want to make multiples so that I can just, make it pretty quick. Now, you may say, well, how am I going to afford all those extra ingredients? Again, look for that meat sale or look for other things that are on sale that will make it more affordable. You can also find things using a little bit less meat, especially in those casseroles. You probably won't be able to tell. And in soups and stews and chili, use a little bit less meat, more beans, like we talked about last week. So freezing an extra batch is a great way to get your freezer stocked and to use up those sale items. Another way to use up sale items is what we call dump meals. These are really pretty quick and very easy. So you put together a recipe in a freezer bag. And it doesn't even have to be a complete recipe. If you have some of that extra chicken, you bought the big thing of chicken, what are you going to do with the extra? Well, you can always put those in a dump meal. So put them in a bag, put some vinaigrette over them, or some other kind of sauce, barbecue, anything really. There's lots of recipes out there. And freeze it flat, and that way it doesn't take up as much room in your freezer. And so then you can take it out the night before, put it in your refrigerator to thaw, and in the morning you can put it in your slow cooker, or you can put it in an electric pressure cooker in the afternoon, or even in the oven and cook it. So this is a great way to use up, again, those sale items. Now, some people like to put some vegetables in there, and that's great. Onions and peppers, just throw them in there. Canned vegetables, great. I don't put potatoes in my frozen to freeze because they don't do as well. They kind of discolor. Other vegetables, sweet potatoes, zucchini, that kind of thing, you may want to blanch them first. It just takes a few extra minutes, and most people really prefer the finished product after those vegetables are blanched. So dump meals are quick and easy and a great way to use things that are on sale or extra things that you have. But we got to talk about food safety. So you need to use freezer-safe packaging. This is a storage bag. This is a freezer bag. There's a difference. Make sure that you use freezer bags for freezing because you probably won't like the product if you don't. Aluminum foil is great. heavy duty, works really well, especially in the freezer. There's other freezer papers. Just make sure you wrap it really well and try to get all the air out, because that's going to give you a better product. And label, label, label. We had some extra ham left over at Christmas, so I put the date that I put it in the freezer and what it was. And this is just sliced ham, and I can still tell it's sliced ham. But if it's been in there for a few months or a year, it may be kind of hard to tell what exactly that is. So that's why labeling is so important. Now, you can label the date that you put it in the freezer, or you can put a use by date, but for about 3 months ahead, if that's what you prefer. You also want to freeze quickly. Now, all these things I did 8 of these little bags. I didn't just stack them on top of one another to freeze. I spread them out in the freezer as much as I could so they could freeze quickly and individually, and then I can stack them up in my freezer to save space. One last thing, thaw safely. When we're talking about packaging, which one of these is the best thing to use? Let's check the bottom. This one is microwave safe, dishwasher safe, and freezer safe. This one is not. A lot of people have just extra food containers around and they want to use those, but they're probably not going to like the end product. It's not going to stay as good in this kind of packaging as it would in this. So make sure you use good packaging and thaw it safely. So not on the counter, and if you're going to put it in the refrigerator to thaw, make sure that you put it on a tray, because on occasion your bags can get punctured in the freezer and you don't really want to mess in your refrigerator, especially if you had raw meat. Yeah, don't do that. So put it on the tray. Thaw it in the refrigerator is the best way to do that. You can thaw it in the microwave or in water that you change every 30 minutes, cold water that you change every 30 minutes. So refrigerator is by far the easiest thing, but it does take more time. So you may want to have a system where you leave yourself a note at night. Hey, take that something out of the freezer for dinner tomorrow. That way you'll have that product ready to go and you won't be stressed about getting it thawed out. So we've talked about freezing and extras, cooking some extra chicken, beef, or whatever, making an extra batch, dump meals, and how to keep that food safe in the freezer. This will all save you money because you're not going to be wasting food. You're not going to throw it away because you forgot about it in the refrigerator. You've used it all, and it's going to be quick and easy for you. Next time, for our last session, we'll talk about entertaining. Now, I know we haven't been entertaining much, but when we do start entertaining again soon, you don't want to blow your whole budget on one party. Now I'm going to turn it over to Becca, who's going to show us this yummy vegetable lasagna. Have a great week.
Hi guys, welcome back to Made at Home. These budgeting tips are great this month. So today's episode, we're going to do a veggie lasagna 2 ways. We're going to make it to eat later, and then we're going to make it to freeze and really eat later. So it's a way that you can kind of save on some time, buy a little bit more in bulk, and still be able to use your ingredients. So what we're gonna do is you need a bowl. It's already got my egg in it. I'm gonna add my spinach. I'm gonna make sure it's kind of thawed. I'm gonna add my package of spinach in here. I'm gonna actually throw our spinach in the microwave real quick. That way it helps us a little bit. I'm gonna use squash instead of zucchini, just because that's what I had on hand in my freezer. So it was already sliced up and ready to go. Then we're gonna add our mushrooms in here. So you can cut these to where they're much smaller pieces, especially if you're trying to do that, hide the vegetables so your kids still get them. You can do them small. So while we wait on our spinach, we're gonna add our garlic powder and our Italian seasoning into our tomatoes. So this is crushed tomatoes and diced tomatoes. So I just went ahead and used canned tomatoes for that. You can also add in crushed red pepper. I just didn't have any in my pantry. So let's grab our spinach. There we go. That'll mix a little bit better. We'll grab our spinach. We're gonna mix it. So a lot of this was ingredients that just are right there in the freezer. Easy to grab and go. So we have our noodles ready. We need to stir our tomatoes here. So you could do this as one large and just double it, or I'm just dividing my recipe up. So we're gonna start with laying our noodles on the bottom. So in my crock pot, I'm not gonna have them cooked, but in my frozen, I went ahead and boiled my noodles so that they were a little bit cooked, so that when I'm ready to eat this later, all I gotta do is stick it in the oven and let it really just melt together. So we did use whole wheat pasta, which it's really recommended that you try to eat whole wheat pasta, or at least replace half of the grains that you eat with a whole wheat. So our next layer, we're gonna make our vegetable layer here. So that's our spinach, our mushrooms, our squash. So we're gonna make that this layer here. So you can really see the vegetables. If you really didn't want to, you can again dice them really fine, and then you're doing more of a hidden veggie lasagna. So on top of that, we're gonna add our tomato mixture. We'll just splatter some on there. Splatter it in here too. Cheese, important. So we got shredded mozzarella cheese here. We're just gonna sprinkle that on top. And sprinkle it on top of this one. And we're gonna layer another layer of noodles. So this one we're gonna want to make sure that even if the noodles are a little warm, that it's cooled completely before we put it in our freezer, and then make sure it's frozen. We're gonna wrap it solid, date it, label it so that we know what it is. Let's talk about wrapping that lasagna up. So I took my aluminum pan and we're gonna put some foil on top of it. Then we'll wrap foil the other way. Make sure it's wrapped, sealed nice and tightly. Then, it's a really good thing, especially if there's multiple people in your house, to label that. So we're gonna label this as our veggie lasagna. We're gonna put a date on it, and that helps us keep up with what date we put that in our freezer and when it'll be good by. And then I'm gonna top it with an extra layer on top of it. and it goes in to the freezer. So you'll just pull it out. Make sure you take the plastic layer, if you choose to put a plastic layer on top of it. Make sure you take that off before you're able to just stick it in a preheated oven, and it will be ready for your family to enjoy for dinner. What it is. Add our lasagna noodles onto our crock pot one that'll be ready for us to eat this afternoon, this evening for dinner. We're gonna actually add another layer here. So because it's a deeper pot, we're gonna have more layers. So we're gonna put our veggie layer in there. Let me just show you kind of what it's looking like. It looks great. We're gonna add our tomato layer in. Then we're gonna add our cheese layer in. We actually need a little more cheese, so let me grab my other bag. Cheese to it. I'll top it with another layer of noodles. So, we're gonna put that crock pot on. It'll take about 3 hours on high and about 5 hours on low, and you've got your crock pot lasagna ready. And we've got our frozen lasagna ready. So that's one way that while you're meal prepping, you can make a meal for this week and a meal for next week. Buy in bulk, save yourself a little bit. Thanks for joining this episode of Made at Home.